You're watching Euronews Now. Thanks for joining us. Our top stories this hour. Queues at vaccination centres across Britain as the UK's drive to give all adults their COVID-19 booster by the end of the year gets underway. Swedish Coast Guard prosecutors open a preliminary investigation into possible gross negligence after two ships collide in the Baltic Sea. And the Champions League in a spin after a technical hitch forces a redraw.
Queues have been forming at vaccination centres up and down the UK after the government announced an end-of-month target to get booster jabs in the arms of all adults, or at least to have an appointment for one. Although it's hoped the symptoms from the new Omicron variant will be mild, one person in the UK has died from the virus. Its transmissibility is a major concern.
While Omicron represents over 20% of cases in England, we've already seen it rise to over 44% in London, and we expect it to become the dominant COVID-19 variant in the capital in the next 48 hours.
At the same time, Norway is banning the serving of alcohol in bars and restaurants and imposing stricter rules in schools, while it too speeds up vaccinations to curb an Omicron outbreak. Remote working will also be compulsory where possible. The measures will come into force overnight from Tuesday to Wednesday and are expected to last 4 weeks. Meanwhile, Denmark is pushing forward with its vaccination programme to enable everyone over 40 to receive a third booster dose. Denmark is second worldwide only to the UK in confirmed cases of Omicron, with both countries having extensive sequencing of samples to detect variants quickly. And mainland China has reported its first Omicron case in the northern city of Tianjin. The Chinese authorities reported that it was detected in someone returning from overseas. The first case of the highly transmissible variant comes as Beijing is gearing up for February's Winter Olympics.
Boris Johnson faces a major test of his authority today as leader of his Conservative Party and Prime Minister of the UK. Dozens of his own members of Parliament are expected to vote against new COVID restrictions when they come before the House later. His government has a big majority, but some believe he could need votes from the opposition Labour Party to pass the legislation. It would be a humiliating blow for Johnson, whose past few months have been consumed by a sequence of scandals, undermining his popularity among the general public and his status as a vote winner for the Conservative Party. There have been inquiries into the murky ways in which his holidays and the renovation of his Downing Street residence have been paid for by friends and donors. An embarrassing U-turn on a plan to relax the rules on lobbying by MPs. And most recently, accusations that he and his staff ignored the rules on holding Christmas parties last year when the pandemic was much worse. Many Conservative MPs have lost patience with being told to vote for things they don't agree with and then facing predictable political consequences. Even loyalists in the London political bubble have started to talk about Boris Johnson being on the way out as Prime Minister in a way they never have before. But he also has a reputation for riding out the worst of political storms, and this could ultimately prove to be another of those. Ty Genwright, Euronews in London.
Swedish authorities are investigating whether or not drunkenness contributed to a deadly collision in the Baltic Sea. One person has died after their Danish-flagged vessel collided with a British ship. Another remains missing. Matthew in the Cube has more.
Sweden's maritime authorities said it was first alerted about an incident early on Monday morning involving a Danish-flagged vessel and another cargo ship from the United Kingdom. They are said to have collided here, south of the Swedish town of Ostad and near towards the Danish island of Bornholm. We know that one crew member from that Danish-flagged vessel has died and the other remains missing. Let's show you pictures from the scene. Although the British ship and its crew were said to be unharmed, you can see there that that Danish-flagged vessel has capsized and was left floating in the water when the authorities arrived. It has now, they say, been towed to a Swedish port for further inspection. And Sweden's Coast Guard told Euronews earlier more about the ongoing operation.
People have heard screams from the water, but we have not been able to confirm this. So right now we're working on trying to get into the ship to see if we can locate any of the crew members on board.
The cause of the nighttime collision in this busy shipping lane is still being investigated. But prosecutors with Sweden's Coast Guard say they have opened a preliminary investigation on charges of gross negligence and gross sea drunkenness. 2 people, a British national and a Croatian national, have so far been arrested as suspects. And it's also worth noting that the Swedish authorities say they are aware of potential sea pollution caused by this collision of those 2 ships in the Baltic Sea. But alongside the search and rescue mission, they are also making sure there is no environmental impact of this incident.
Rescuers continue to search the rubble of the collapsed Mayfield candle factory following deadly tornadoes in Kentucky. 6 states in all were hit on Friday, but Kentucky and the town of Mayfield were hit the hardest. The number of dead is slowly rising as searchers work their way through the debris.
We're still looking at this as a rescue effort, so every time that goes by and the temperatures that dip low in the 30s and high 20s at night is critical to make sure that we get to those individuals that still may be entrapped in that building.
But the tragic nature of the disaster is taking its toll on everyone.
A few more facts about those we've lost. 18 are still unidentified. Of the ones that we know, the age range is 5 months to 86 years, and 6 are younger than 18.
US President Joe Biden will visit Kentucky on Wednesday to survey the damage. He's already declared a major disaster in Kentucky, allowing additional federal aid to be channeled into the recovery efforts.
What I indicated to the government when we talked about this 2 days ago was that I don't want to be in the way. There's a lot going on, and when the president shows up, there's a long tail to follow, an awful lot of folks.
Meanwhile, survivors are going through the wreckage of what a few days ago was their home.
In the United States, the House committee investigating the January 6th riot on Capitol Hill has voted to recommend criminal prosecution of Donald Trump's former chief of staff, Mark Meadows. Meadows initially cooperated with the committee and handed over records, but he's now refusing to testify. Last month, the Justice Department indicted former President Trump's longtime ally Steve Bannon for contempt, after he too refused to cooperate with the investigation into the riot. According to documents obtained by the committee, a January 5th Meadows email indicated that the National Guard was on standby to protect pro-Trump people. Meadows has refused to explain what he meant. The issue is of high interest to congressional investigators probing whether Trump played a role in the 3-hour delay between the Capitol Police's urgent request for National Guard support and their ultimate arrival at the Capitol, which had been overrun by pro-Trump rioters.
A mercenary and paramilitary group is today the target of EU sanctions. Known as the Wagner Group, the EU says this organisation, backed by Russia, tortures, kills and executes people in conflict zones around the world. The EU's foreign policy chief insists that the Wagner Group is responsible for serious human rights abuses.
The activities of this group reflects the Russia hybrid warfare. They present a threat and create instability in a number of countries around the world.
The sanctions are directed to the group itself, 8 people and 3 entities aligned to it, all of which are now facing a travel ban and the freezing of their assets within the whole of the European Union.
Vous savez, cette société You have this company which is waging war by proxy in a completely irresponsible way. It does not theoretically depend on any state, and it's hiding behind this classification as a private company. It's doing so with total impunity, as it declares itself a mercenary company.
Their role in committing some of the most grotesque breaches of human rights law is an example of the new ways in which groups and regimes engage and are involved in armed conflict, particularly Russia.
Russia wants on the one hand to avoid its regular forces to be seen acting in these countries with this behavior outside the scope of international humanitarian law. International conflict law, carrying out of war crimes and actions totally contrary to the international law. They are not interested. But they are interested in having armed forces on the ground that can help one of his sides.
The Wagner Group has committed destabilising activities in Ukraine, Syria, Libya, the Central African Republic, Sudan, Mozambique and Mali. Shona Murray, Euronews, Brussels.
No comment from the Kremlin just yet, but Moscow has always denied any links to the Wagner Group. It's believed that Russian businessman Yevgeny Prigozhin, who has close ties with the President of Russia Vladimir Putin, is linked to the group. He is already under EU sanction for undermining peace in Libya and support of the Wagner Group, but the businessman himself denies all such accusations. His lawyers have even filed a lawsuit against the editor-in-chief of the Echo of Moscow Radio for calling Mr. Prigozhin the owner of the Wagner Group. Asked whether there was a government link to Russian mercenaries in Mali, Vladimir Putin said that private military companies from Russia do not represent the interests of the Russian state and underlined that it was a private business. The Russian Foreign Ministry have stated that Mali authorities have turned to a Russian private military company to assist in the fight against terrorism and described its actions as security and advisory. Galina Polonskaya for Euronews.
There's still a will to work together. That from French President Emmanuel Macron on his visit to Hungary. It's despite rifts between the EU and Budapest over rule of law. Prime Minister Viktor Orbán says he respects Macron.
I would like to make it clear that Hungary's relationship with President Macron is one of respect. And since France is the home of the encyclopedias and their definitions are the best, we tend to accept their definitions. We also accept what the President said last time. We are political opponents and European partners.
Both leaders did find common ground with European defence policy, stances on nuclear power and agriculture. And Macron says he hoped they could also reach a consensus on migration.
There have been tensions between us in the past, but what Europe has experienced in recent weeks, and I am exchanging views with my Polish counterpart about this as well, calls us to rethink our common organization, to better protect our external borders, and to find ways of acting together effectively in Europe.
Our Euronews correspondent sent this report from Budapest.
It's been some 15 years since a French head of state has visited Hungary, but the timing is now perfect. Viktor Orbán can show the opposition and his camp that, contrary to opposition claims, he's not isolated on the European stage, and Emmanuel Macron can hold talks not only with the Hungarian Prime Minister, but also with the leaders of the Visegrad Group before the start of France's EU presidency. And both politicians are also preparing for next year's elections.
Magyar Ádám, Euronews, Budapest.
The European Commission, together with Poland, has unveiled a multi-million euro agreement in a push to supply more vaccines to Eastern Partnership countries. The 35 million euros will include the costs related to vaccine sharing in the 6 countries Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Georgia, the Republic of Moldova and Ukraine. Under the terms of the deal, no country is allowed to make a profit from the move. The vaccination rate in these countries is significantly lower than the EU average.
It is only the vaccination that can save us all. And we are talking about our Eastern partner countries, where the vaccination average rate is only 28%. So it is high time to help them to speed up the vaccination rate and get everybody fully vaccinated.
The first delivery under the new mechanism is set to happen in the next few weeks. It is hoped that quicker and easier access to jabs will bring the overall vaccination rate in these countries up to the WHO's target of 40% by the end of the year and 70% by the end of 2022.
Seven people have been killed after a human trafficker's car crashed into a house in Hungary in the early hours of Tuesday morning. The vehicle had a Serbian number plate and it happened in a town near to the Serbian border. 4 people have been injured, including the driver, who's been arrested and will be charged with people smuggling. Indonesia has been struck by a 7.3 magnitude earthquake, according to the US Geological Survey. There have been no significant damage or deaths immediately reported. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center says there's no threat of a tsunami after earlier warnings it was possible within a 1,000 kilometers radius of the epicenter. After the initial Champions League first knockout stage draw was eventually declared void due to a technical error, an official selection has now been confirmed. Manchester United will now face Atletico Madrid instead of Paris Saint-Germain. It'll disappoint fans who would have liked to see Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi revive their old rivalry. Sports presenter Will Dalton explains what happened.
The draw was first made, and then they discovered there is a certain set of rules. Like, for instance, you cannot draw a club that you've faced already in the group stage. You cannot face a team from your own country. They made a mistake in allocating the balls during the first draw. They had to go back and do the draw again. However, Chelsea, the defending champions, will still be very happy with the draw. They drew Lille twice in both draws, a team they would fancy being able to get past. Elsewhere, we can see that the La Liga champions, Atletico Madrid, who are not having a vintage season, they've drawn Manchester United. United had originally drawn PSG in the first round. It was going to be Messi against Ronaldo, but that's not going to happen. So it's Atletico Madrid against Manchester United. Liverpool, they originally drew Salzburg. They've got a slightly tougher draw now. They've got the Serie A champions, Inter Milan. Sporting Lisbon drew Man City. Man City will be hoping and expecting, I think, to get through the Portuguese side as they still look to take home their first Champions League trophy. But the tie of the round is without a doubt Paris Saint-Germain against Real Madrid. Lionel Messi going back to Spain for the first time, of course, a huge Barcelona fan favourite. He'll be taking on his old nemesis in Real Madrid, and that's definitely the tie of the round.